Inside the Indian city, where hundreds of faces began to repeat themselves. Then we realized it wasn't a coincidence. At first, nothing felt unusual. The city moved the way any other city does. Streets crowded with movement. Vendors calling out prices, scooters weaving through narrow gaps, people passing each other without a second thought, faces everywhere. Too many to notice, too many to remember. That's why it took time. It always does. When you see one familiar face in a crowd, your brain dismisses it. When you see two, you assume coincidence. When you see three, you laugh it off. Human perception is designed to protect itself from overload. It smooths patterns. It ignores anomalies. This city relied on that. The first moment of doubt didn't come from shock. It came from discomfort. A quiet, creeping feeling that something was slightly off. A man waiting at a street corner. Dark hair, narrow jaw, a faint scar near the eyebrow. Ordinary, forgettable. Then 2 streets later, the same face. Same proportions, same scar, same neutral expression. You hesitate. You wonder if you're mistaken. Cities recycle faces all the time, don't they? Then you see it again and again. Not identical in clothing, not identical in age, but identical in structure. Bone for bone, eye spacing, mouth curvature. The way the face rests when it isn't expressing anything at all. The repetition doesn't announce itself. It accumulates. Slowly, the city stops feeling large. It starts feeling copied. You begin paying attention without meaning to. Every passing face becomes a question. Every crowd becomes a test. That's when the pattern reveals itself. Hundreds of people, different neighborhoods, different generations. The same underlying face, stretched slightly by age, compressed by youth, altered by time, but never enough to hide it. At first, we thought it was perception bias. The brain is famous for finding patterns where none exist. So we tried to disprove it. We stopped looking. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. The repetition wasn't random. It wasn't localized. It didn't cluster around families or streets. It crossed social classes, professions, distances. Children carried the same facial blueprint as adults they weren't related to. Elderly faces echoed features of teenagers they had never met. The city wasn't repeating families. It was repeating faces. And that's when coincidence stopped being an option. The unsettling part wasn't how similar they looked. It was how normal they acted. No one stared too long. No one reacted when passing someone who looked just like them. No confusion. No hesitation. No acknowledgement. As if the repetition was invisible or expected. You start to notice something else then. Something harder to explain. When 2 of them pass each other, they don't lock eyes. Not out of avoidance. Out of indifference. The kind that suggests familiarity so deep it no longer registers. Like looking at a mirror you've known your entire life. The city doesn't feel alarmed by the repetition. It feels built around it. You ask yourself the obvious questions. Genetics, migration, history, coincidence amplified by numbers. But those explanations collapse under scale. This isn't one face repeated a few times. This is a face embedded into the population like a template, a baseline. The most disturbing realization comes later. The face itself isn't remarkable. No exaggerated features, no striking beauty, no deformity, nothing memorable, which makes it worse. Because if the city had chosen a face to repeat, it chose one that disappears easily, one that blends, one that doesn't demand attention, a face designed to be ignored. You begin to feel watched. Not by eyes, but by familiarity. Every direction feels the same. Every crowd feels like a loop. And slowly, something changes in you. You stop scanning faces for difference. You start scanning for deviation. A crooked nose feels loud. A wider jaw feels wrong. A face that breaks the pattern feels intrusive, like an error in the environment. That's when you realize the city isn't the only thing adapting. You are. The longer you stay, the harder it becomes to remember what faces are supposed to look like. Your internal reference shifts. The repeated face becomes the default. Everything else becomes abnormal. This is how environments train perception, not through force, through repetition. And repetition doesn't need explanation. It only needs time. We tried documenting it, quietly, casually, no confrontation. No pointing, just observation. The reaction was always the same. Polite confusion, a smile, a pause, and then a response that never addressed the question directly. People spoke about the city with pride, with warmth, with belonging. They spoke about history, about community, about continuity, never about faces, never about resemblance. It was as if language itself had learned to step around the subject. That's when the final thought begins to form, the one you don't want to have. What if this isn't something that happened to the city? What if it's something the city maintains? Patterns don't need intention to persist. They only need reinforcement. If faces repeat long enough, individuality becomes unnecessary. If difference disappears slowly, no one mourns it. And if no one questions it, the pattern survives indefinitely. The city doesn't announce its secret. It hides it in plain sight, in crowds, in daily routines, in faces you were never meant to compare. The repetition isn't aggressive. It's passive, quiet, efficient. That's why it works. Because nothing here feels like a warning. Until you realize the city isn't repeating faces. It's erasing the need for new ones. And once that thought settles in, you understand something deeply unsettling. This place doesn't feel like an anomaly anymore. It feels like a prototype. A reminder of how easily sameness can replace identity, not through control, but through comfort.
One after another.
She always tells the same story.
Because it's true.
You forgot the part where you
I did
fainted.
not faint. I only felt a little
You were
light.
sitting.
I was sitting, yes. That is
I'm
allowed.
gonna tell them how you tell